Welcome to Classical Conversations. I'm Haley Taylor, and joining me today we've got Canadian-born violinist Lara St. Who's been described as something of a phenomenon by the Strad and a high-powered soloist by the New York Times. Lara, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So it's kind of a strange time right now, as you know, there's a quarantine, a shutdown going on. And so my first question is just very basic. It's just, how are you doing? How are you surviving during this time?
I'm doing okay. I'm in Manhattan, so it is a little bit of the epicenter, as they say. But I go out and I bang my pots and cheer at 7:00 for all those frontline workers, and I stay inside mostly and try to stay positive, I guess, and I try to accomplish like one thing a day.
Right.
I'm not overly ambitious in this quarantine, but I'm actually, what worries me much more is people who are in a worse situation, like my colleagues on Broadway and a lot of musicians in New York who just have no recourse at this point. Mm-hmm. And the horrible word, like indefinitely. I mean, we just don't even know when. If only people knew that, like, in 3 months, okay, it's going to start back again. There would be some sort of something to hold on to. But anyway, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time and, keep my fingers crossed.
You mentioned kind of that sense of indefinitely, that it is a scary term. And do you feel like that has changed your perspective on your art? I mean, you have your own recording label, your music. I mean, how has that kind of shifted a little bit during this time?
Well, I do have a label and lots of recordings, and sure, I can sit on Zoom and play a couple pieces for people, but there's nothing like live performance. I mean, that's sort of what we do has to do with, like, community and bringing people together into, unfortunately, at this point, very small spaces. And it's really scary to think how long it may be before that happens again. And it has changed. Well, of course, it's changed everyone's perspective, really, because we we miss concerts. I mean, I miss going to them. I miss playing them. And I think we've only just begun. So.
Yeah, it's a scary time for sure in that regard.
Yeah.
The exciting thing is with this album, Key of A, which I want to talk about. It's your brand new album, just released a month ago or so, but it's from a live performance in 2017. With everything going on in these past few months, I mean, did that affect the release of this album or change how you thought about releasing it into the public?
No, actually, I had planned to release it in April, long before anybody even heard of this coronavirus. So. It took a little while for me to release. It's my label, and I am the sole employee. So it takes me longer to do things than it might companies with a lot more people. But yeah, we had a great time. We recorded it at WGTE and in Boston, and it's two really great sonatas, the greatest of their respective eras for violin and piano. So something that kind of sticks out immediately is the cover art. Actually, when you look at it, it's the album's called The Key of A, as both pieces are in that key. We have Beethoven's Violin Sonata No. 9, the Kreutzer, and then César Franck's Sonata in A major for violin and piano. Then last, kind of hiding on there, Fritz Kreisler's Lovely Rosemary. But the album artwork forms an A. It's two violin bows, and then a saber knife across those two bows. It's actually a Damascus dagger, because the Kreutzer Sonata was the inspiration, of course, for Tolstoy's Kreutzer Sonata, the eponymous novella. And I don't want to do any spoilers here, but the Damascus dagger comes in there at the end. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with let's just say, a bad marriage. And also the Franck Sonata was written as a wedding present. So the idea of the two bows, because both sonatas were written for violinists, and then it just kind of seemed to make a lot of sense. Also, I have a little bit of synesthesia, and for me, the key of A major, A minor has always been red.
Really?
So yeah, so just the whole thing, like the red color, the inspiration of Tolstoy, the idea of both of them being written for violinists, and there's actually over the 100 years between which they were written, there's actually there's a line with violinists, like a student of something like a student of Kreutzer to whom it was dedicated, but originally it was dedicated to the Bridge Tower, but something went wrong, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it was student, and then it comes to Isai, for whom the Franck was written. So there's one or two generations in there, but there is a direct line between the two sonatas, which I think is like really cool.
It's so fascinating. And I love this idea, you have kind of two pieces that do have a connection with love and passion and marriage, but in totally different worlds. With the Beethoven one, it is quite, crimes of passion. And then with the Franck one, it is kind of like a wonderful, beautiful wedding gift, kind of hopeful in that sense. For you, putting these two together on this album, was it something you thought about for a long time? Had it always struck you in that way? Or is it something that evolved later?
Putting them together was an idea that I had when Matt and I first did the Kreutzer Sonata. Like, we've been doing the Franck for quite some time, and we did our first Kreutzer, I think it was maybe about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then I was just like, oh yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. And I had thought that with the Franck when we started doing that 10 years ago in concert. And I just thought what an incredibly strong album that would make.
And then, last on the album, it's Fritz Kreisler's lovely Rosemary. So tell us a little bit about that. It's a little tiny 2-minute piece, and why it was important to kind of include that in on this album, The Key of A.
Well, actually, it was just, we were just fooling around in the studio, actually, and because we did a live version of the recording later in the evening on our second day of recording. We played for an audience of 150 people, and I wanted to add a few things. And I said, hey, let's do Rosemary or whatever. So we just ended up putting a little jazz waltz in the end of it, and it was just like fun in the studio, and it came out very sweetly, like a little dessert. So I decided to include it.
And we should mention, you mentioned Matt, the piano soloist Matt Herskowitz on this album,
yes.
Who is performing alongside you, and someone who I've noticed you perform often with. It's such an interesting relationship and a sonata between the two instruments, in your case, the piano and the violin. And as someone who I'm sure you've performed many times with, I'm sure you're probably comfortable with figuring out who's supporting who, if that's even a question at all.
Well, and especially because these two sonatas, I mean, if anything, they're piano heavy. Mm-hmm, I mean, mm-hmm. I think they're equal, but if anybody called him an accompanist for this kind of thing, I'd probably slap him. No, not just kidding, but no, he's a very, very equal partner, and it's kind of weird. It's almost like playing with a brother or something like that. I do have a brother, a violinist, who I play with, and or I used to when I was little, and we would just do things like off the cuff, and somehow the other would know that we're about to do that. So it makes it possible to be very, very spontaneous about things. Like occasionally I'll just decide, oh, I don't think I want to do this retard today, and somehow he'll just know that. It's hard to explain somehow, but it's pretty cool.
Well, it's a fantastic album, and one, as the cover art alludes to, is filled with passion. As we wind down the interview, usually I like to ask the interviewee what their upcoming tour schedule looks like, but I can imagine in this season, it's probably an odd question to ask. So just in general, looking to the future, like what are some of your hopes and dreams for these next few months?
Well, for the next few months, it's ridiculously enough, I've been actually cooking a lot, and a couple days ago I made about 30 quarts of French-Canadian pea soup and drove it around to friends in 3 different boroughs, just to, I don't know, just somehow help people a little bit by giving them some home-cooked soup. So possibly more along Lara's traveling soup kitchen ideas and things like that, and hopefully, I mean, I'm in a position to be able to help people. So hopefully, I can keep doing that, because I am, as I mentioned, quite worried, but not so much for myself, but just for, well, obviously the world at large, and especially the States, and just, I mean, try to do whatever I can, and also stay healthy and safe, obviously.
Sure.
But I also have I have a pet, which is very helpful. I think he's a 11-year-old jungle iguana, and he's actually been, you know how you hear about all the dogs being so happy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually kind of like that too. Like he's delighted to have company all day long.
He's quite famous on the internet as well, on social media. He's got quite a presence on there, I've noticed.
He's a celebrity. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Lara St. John, thank you so much for joining me today for Classical Conversation in the Key of A. A wonderful combination. I love kind of, the marriage of those two sonatas. And then, of course, that little Kreutzer piece at the end. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thank you.